All right, welcome back, and let's continue the discussion on the security situation in the country, especially with the issue of kidnapping that is currently ravaging the country, if you like, especially the north of the country and that state, that northwestern state of Zamfara. Now being joined on the program from Abuja by Kabiru Adamo, who is the managing director of Beacon Consulting. He is a security risk management and, of course, a security consultant. Mr. Adamo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. How do we deal with this issue of kidnapping? Because it's definitely gone out of hand.
Yes, Deji, it is. Unfortunately, I use this word with all sense of responsibility. It is not a difficult thing to handle. In criminology, kidnap for ransom is categorized under criminal activities. And in dealing with criminal activities, there are three major things you need to ask yourself. The target, the means by which the criminal goes ahead to carry out the objective, and then lastly, the reward. Once you understand these three things, it's very easy to put in place measures to control these three things. So criminologists will tell you, increase the risk for the offender to carry out that offense. In other words, our criminal justice system should understand that they need to punish offenders. Then secondly, make it difficult for them to commit the act. In other words, the effort that they need to carry out. And then lastly, the reward that they get, the ransom they collect, make it impossible for them to enjoy the ransom. So quite easy, and there are lots of theories out there, both in terms of the scientific approach as well as the operational approach for implementation of all of these measures that I've mentioned. So it beats me that the Nigerian security agencies are not carrying out these measures. If we look at all the three that I've mentioned, there is none out of the three that, as at today, the Nigerian government has approached rightly. More what I'm seeing are knee-jerk approaches. So there is kidnap for ransom, you send out the military to Zamfara, to Katsina. Meanwhile, the haven, the forest, the ungoverned spaces where these bandits are using to operate to carry out the nefarious activities of kidnapping, nothing has been done about it. Our security agencies, the equipment they need to monitor conversations between these bandits, nothing has been done. So in terms of policy, in terms of strategies, in terms of operations, nothing has been done in terms of these three approaches to managing the crime of kidnapping.
And yet we have good laws. I mean, the various states have laws against kidnapping. The National Assembly has just passed a bill now still on kidnapping, but you know, all of this would seem not to be making any difference at all.
Well, the laws are as good as they are if they are not implemented. I mentioned the criminal justice system in the course of my conversation. Those laws are supposed to be implemented by that justice system. It's very difficult. Let's use the example of Operation Puff Adder that has been launched by the acting Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu. Quite innovative. I was happy with that operation because for the first time in the history of police operations, they are saying that they want to dominate the ungoverned spaces where these bandits are carrying out their activities. So quite novel, but the challenge is this: they've been arresting people. The IG said more than 300 persons have been arrested, but he didn't tell us that 10 out of those 300 have been prosecuted. So do you just arrest people and just put them in detention without actually prosecuting them? Something is wrong there. And I think the big elephant in the room is intelligence. It's a failure of intelligence. If you take somebody to court and you do not convince the judge that you have evidence that he committed that act, then the judge will not prosecute him. I can use the case of Evans. Everybody knows that case. Till date, Evans is yet to be prosecuted, possibly for reasons around the evidence that the police has gathered. I saw when they took pictures with the phones, and I was telling myself, the evidence has been adulterated. It will be very difficult for you to convince a court, a judge, after all of this adulteration of the evidence, that this guy is guilty of these offenses. So the criminal justice system, these laws will only be effective if we implement them using scientific methods that are available today that unfortunately are not being used by the security agencies.
I mean, you have a strong point there. And you did talk about, this issue of ungoverned places, and we have quite a lot of them. Let's go to Zamfara now. How much of that situation, I mean, talking about ungoverned places now, because we're talking about a state that is very, very huge, and whether we like it or not, there are quite a number of places where you do not have government presence whatsoever, whether security agencies or anything. When you have that kind of situation, of course, there's no question bandits or terrorists would want to come in and sort of take control and provide some kind of alternative. How much of the security situation in Zamfara state today would you say is been driven by, this whole issue of, absence of government presence in some localities?
A lot of it. The case of Zamfara is peculiar in the sense that you have a political structure that unfortunately, forgive me for the use of this language, that I would say has been irresponsible. As at this stage, several of the key political figures in that state are not talking to each other. They are at loggerheads over, the political power play that is in the state. Now, this is how that political leadership has carried out its mantle of leadership for the past 8 years or thereabout. And in that regard, it has left the state vulnerable. Now, we can talk about the ungoverned spaces in the state, which unfortunately it has a lot, several forests, about 4 that I know, that are really massive and transcend Nigeria. Some of them lead into Niger, unfortunately. And then from Zamfara, if you come back into Nigeria, they lead into Katsina, they lead into Kaduna, sometimes as far as Niger State even. So you have these corridors, quote and unquote, where these bandits are able to move around. And this leadership, political leadership, was unable to galvanize its people to come together to face the common enemy. Now, in the midst of all of that, you have a high rate of unemployment, you have poverty, you have the effects of climate change. Remember that Zamfara is in the arid region around the Sahara. The impact of climate change has met Zamfara more than any of the other states that abound. Now, in the midst of all of that, you also have a governance structure that has not been able to differentiate between the requirements for economic development and the requirements for social development. So add all of this together, and a really poorly organized and structured security arrangement. We can go into discussions around who did he appoint, the leadership, political leadership appoint as their security, special assistant, special advisor. What kind of relationship does he have with his commissioners of police and the military leadership in the state? We can have those discussions. So all of these factors together, I think, have created the unique and unfortunate situation that we have in Zamfara. Yes, the ungoverned spaces are part of it, but in dissecting the problem and proffering solutions, we also need to talk about all of these other things that I mentioned that are peculiar with the state.
How distracting do you think this is for our security chiefs, who should actually be concentrating on the fight against insurgency in the northeast of the country?
The reality is that our security agencies are stretched, and unfortunately, they are not dealing with a strategy of a security architecture that is stretched. What I mean by this is we're seeing them operating in silos. If you are stretched, you come together and then you put all your strengths together to deal with the common problem. But what we're seeing is each of them operating in silos, and that means that the effect of the stretch on them. Just the other day, the Chief of Army Staff who was at the National Assembly, actually admitted that he's deployed in the 36 states of the Federation plus Abuja. How many soldiers do we have? We're talking about 100,000. And then they are deployed in 36 states of the Federation. Then the police, they are always complaining that they are understaffed. But unfortunately, I don't see them incorporating the elements that are available to them. The Civil Defense Corps, as an example, is carrying out a function of the police. The road safety is carrying out a function of the police. The VIO are carrying out functions of the police. How come these agencies will not come together? Even to an extent, the customs and the immigration, why wouldn't they come together and then to deal with the common problem? We do have a common problem, which is one of insecurity. And all of these agencies that I've mentioned, to an extent, are carrying out civil defense responsibilities. Add the DSS to that, add the Nigerian Intelligence Agency, add the Defense Intelligence Agency. Now, they need to come together. We have proffered, we've discussed in the past, the need for the creation of an intelligence fusion center. Actually, there is a presidential directive for the creation of an intelligence fusion center, one in Abuja and the other one in Maiduguri. Now, whether that center has been created or not, the reality is that it is not effective. So yes, the security agencies, the military, all of them are stretched, but they are not, unfortunately, responding to the circumstances that they found themselves by coming together and to deal with it. We can extend the discussion by dissecting why they are doing this. There is a theory that says perhaps the leadership of these organizations are happy to take on more responsibility because it means more budget, and then that means more corruption. Now, if that is the case, it means the National Assembly needs to come in and exercise its role of oversight to ensure that this corruption is either reduced, contained, or eliminated completely, so that agencies work together in synergy, and then with the end result is that we have less challenges of security in the country. Currently, they are not working together in synergy, and that is why they are stretched.
Very quickly, how bad do you think things can get before they get better?
I want to be very optimistic, but if things continue the way they are, with this haphazard approach, knee-jerk approach to security, with the political leadership not giving the correct and right management style. By this, I mean not a project management style where you give somebody responsibility and then you monitor to ensure that he carries out that responsibility. Then I think it's going to get really, really bad, unfortunately. The situation like what we had in Mexico, where unfortunately, virtually, there was a breakdown of law and order to the extent that the whole country was affected. We may have that in Nigeria, as it were. So everybody, the government, and by the government I mean the executive arm, the legislative arm, and the judicial arm needs to come together. We, the media, you are doing an amazing job by putting pressure on these arms of government. Then the civil society organizations need to put pressure too. This is an issue that we should not allow to lie low. We should talk about it until the government takes the measures that it needs to take. I have mentioned these measures, very simple: increase the effort, make it impossible for them to enjoy the reward. In other words, decide on ransom. We can say no more payment of ransom, or if we even allow the payment of ransom, then the security agencies should implement technological devices to track how these ransoms are being paid, so that the collectors are arrested and they are now punished. And then lastly, the criminal justice system should ensure that offenders are punished, and then deterrence will follow. So unless all of these are done, the situation will get bad.
Kabiru Adamu, Security Management Risk Expert and the Managing Director of Beacon Consulting. Thank you very much for your thoughts there.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll switch focus. On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
The Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band.
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues.